basically, I've never cooked a steak before. This is probably like my first time that I'm cooking like a real steak that I have to go to the grocery store and buy it. I don't think I really eat meat on the daily. So it makes sense, I guess, that like I really don't know how to cook it. What exactly do you have to do to make a good steak? Every single time that I followed the recipe step by step, I don't learn anything from it. So I really wanted to start this series to like cook things by myself, like slowly understanding why things work or why they don't. Not just like trusting people that tell me like, do this, like why? Like why should I do that? I have never been to Whole Foods, and when I went, it was a little bit overwhelming for me just because I hadn't shopped for steaks alone. I knew that I had to get a marbled steak, so I looked at all the steaks and they all looked pretty marbled. So what do you do when you're put on the spot by the butcher and there's people around you and they're like, what steak do you want? And I freaked out. I was like, I don't know. The parts of the cow vary how much use that muscle is getting. So for example, the neck is definitely one part of the body that gets a lot of use of those muscles. So that's why it's not gonna be as tender. It's other muscles that don't get as much work done, like filet mignon, that muscle didn't get used as much, which is why it's very tender and it's very nice and soft. So parts of the ribs and like the tenderloin, those are parts that are very tender, and those are usually more expensive. This is where you can find cuts like the ribeye, filet mignon, and then you have like the cheaper cuts, which is usually an area that's more worked by the cow. And these cuts are like the skirt steak, the brisket. So obviously fat relates to like flavor. So that's why there's a lot of lean cuts. They're not as good as the cuts that have like nice layers of fat. My goal is to find two steaks. One that was part of the expensive ones and the other that was part of the cheap ones. One of the things that I've read in the little like research that I did is that you have to either salt the steaks immediately before cooking them or the night before to like 40 minutes before. There's a huge difference between like salting the steaks immediately and salting the steaks 10 minutes before, because salt, it draws moisture out. So if you leave it on the steak for a long time, it might remove a lot of moisture, and then when you cook it, it kind of has a brine, so it's not gonna let it sear nicely. The most important thing about cooking a steak is for it to have like a nice golden crust, and obviously like a lot of the flavor comes from that like browning of the meat. Beyond the 40-50 minutes, it's gonna remove the moisture from the surface and you're gonna pat it dry. Then you'll have like a really dry surface for you to put your meat on. The steak is incredibly thick. We really want to be careful with like how hot our pan is, because if it's too hot, then the crust will just burn and the inside won't cook. But if it's not hot enough, it's not gonna get that like really nice crust that we want, right? So there's like a really nice sweet spot. So I put some vegetable oil, I set the cast iron, I waited for it to get to a hot enough temperature so that when the meat actually went on it, it would be like a nice, you would hear like a sizzle. So vegetable oil has a high smoke point, and that's really gonna help with searing something, because we do need to get it like a little bit high. It really doesn't matter how many times you flip it. I flipped it like a couple times. I checked to see if like it was golden, if it was doing well, and yeah, like I just waited for the steak to get a nice brown color on both sides and checked if it was like reaching its temperature. And when it was about to reach its temperature, that's when you add butter. The thing that is very important about butter is that butter burns very fast and a very low temperature. So that's why they say you should add butter almost like towards the end of the cooking instead of at the beginning. That's why in the beginning we started with like a vegetable oil, which has a very high smoke point, and then we have like the butter at the end, which has a very low smoke point. Then next important tip that everybody says that you should not skip is letting your meat rest. The thing is, like, if you cut a steak right after you finish it on the grill, it's just gonna like release all the moisture that was in it, right? But if you leave the steak to rest, it's gonna reabsorb all of that moisture back in. So while I left the meat resting, I did a small sauce just with like some white wine, heavy cream, butter, cracked some pepper in there. And I think that was good enough for like my first try of meat. It's looking really good. I think it's really tasty. I feel like I learned a lot. I feel like if I go back to the supermarket, I'm gonna be like way more confident on this. Thank you for watching this video. Give it a like if you really like it, and I'll see you soon. Bye.